Daniel Sports Central, we go for our next team prediction of this offseason, and it's going to be for the Alabama Crimson Tide, a team that went 12-2 overall in the 2023 season, and it's the start of a new era in Tuscaloosa. First year under new head coach Kalen DeBoer. How's this team going to be in 2024? A new era for Alabama. That's what we'll be talking about here today. We'll be looking at the players this team will be losing and returning, and breaking their schedule top to bottom in this video. So with that, let's get started with a quick recap of 2023. Once again, the record being 12-2. I would say this was a successful season for Alabama. I mean, I know they didn't come away with a national championship, which is kind of the standard now for Alabama. It's a successful season if you win a natty, otherwise maybe a letdown. But for Alabama to get to 12 wins, to win the SEC once again, to get back to the college football playoff and put up what was an incredible fight against Michigan, took them to overtime, definitely could have won that. I would say successful season for Alabama despite maybe a slightly disappointing finish. But you consider, coming off of that Texas loss in week 2, that was kind of a game where I think most expected Alabama to take that one, but for Texas to win it by 10, that kind of threw some questions into the season, and it definitely was a season with a lot of ups and downs. There were several really good wins, beat Ole Miss by a couple of touchdowns, beat Tennessee by a couple of touchdowns, same with LSU. All really good teams last season, but what ultimately matters is that this team won the SEC once again and once again made it back to the college football playoff. But with that, let's look forward to 2024 now with your roster preview. And this is a team that's going to look a whole lot different. That's honestly to be expected with having a new head coach, especially after Nick Saban. You could say the greatest college football coach of all time, leaving Alabama and retiring. So it's going to be a much different team in 2024. Kalen DeBoer taking over, who is an incredible coach. That honestly goes without saying. Seeing what he did at Washington this past season, especially, just incredible. So I think Alabama's in good hands, honestly. I feel like this is a team that's got a bright future. But 2024 will be a bit different, I think, for the Crimson Tide. The team's going to look a lot different. Jalen Milrose coming back for starting quarterback, which honestly is the one main, you could say, constant between 2023 and 2024. Otherwise, Jace McClellan's gone, Roy Dell Williams is gone, Jermaine Burton's gone, Isaiah Bond's gone, Mari Niblock's gone. So those are most of your key skill players all off to different places for this upcoming season. And yeah, that's something worth keeping in mind, obviously, because this team's going to look a whole lot different, really on both sides of the ball, too. Look at the defense, losing 1 on the D-line, 3 linebackers, and then 4 in the secondary. So especially with the linebackers and then the secondary, this defense is going to be a lot different in 2024 as well. So it's obviously the start of a new era. Once again, though, this is to be expected. Alabama hasn't had to experience this, the turnover with having a new head coach, but this is exactly what it looks like most times. And I think Kalen DeBoer is a great head coach, and I feel like this team will be they're going to have a bright future, and they'll get back to the college football playoff and potentially be winning national championships once again. But it might take a couple of years for this team to rebuild a bit and get back into that position. But with that, let's look at the transfer portal and recruiting now. This is once again to be expected. A lot of players have left this program over this offseason, but you're bringing in Austin Mack, a quarterback from Washington. You're also bringing in Jeremy Bernard from Washington. He's expected to be a starter at receiver this season. You're losing a lot of skill players that we talked about. And then you're bringing in Brailsford, defensive lineman, also from Washington. LT Overton's coming in from Texas A&M. You also got Damani Jackson coming in from USC, and obviously losing a few significant players for this defense last season as well. But recruiting-wise, that is a positive of this team. They got the second-ranked recruiting class in the country. That is just behind Georgia. Got 5 5-stars coming in and 17 4-stars. So I still got this team at an 8 out of 10 on the future forecast. I feel like this, once again, is a team that's got a bright future. I feel like 2024 could be a little bit bumpy for this team. But I do think that you look a couple years down the road, I wouldn't be surprised if Alabama was back in a similar position, competing for national championships once again. But with that, let's take a look at the schedule now. Looking forward to 2024. And by the way, I'm sure Crimson Tide fans are aware by now, but this is potentially the most difficult schedule in the country. It's definitely up there. You look at Georgia, Tennessee on the road, LSU on the road, having to go to Oklahoma now. They could be solid in 2024. And then I don't really want to say Wisconsin's a tough game, but Wisconsin is a tough place to play, so I'll give them that much. This is a very difficult schedule. You can't sleep on Auburn this season. and don't forget about Missouri as well. So this is a schedule that's got a lot of tests, and we're going to learn a lot about Alabama in this upcoming season just because of how difficult this schedule is. But you consider Western Kentucky, South Florida, 2 pretty easy games right off the bat, then off to Madison, and then Georgia, huge game there to finish out September. Vanderbilt on the road, South Carolina at home, Tennessee on the road, Missouri at home, and then you got LSU on the road in Death Valley, Mercer at home, OU on the road, then Auburn at home to finish out the season in the Iron Bowl. So, but looking at the first month of action, I do think first 2 games are pretty easy wins here. Western Kentucky, South Florida take care of both of them. I think Wisconsin, I'm actually going to keep this game within 14 points, which maybe is a little bit crazy. Wisconsin's going to be a strong defensive team. I wouldn't be surprised if their offense was atrocious once again. I feel like there will be a little bit of improvement, but I do think you're definitely going to beat Wisconsin, but that's maybe a game that's going to be a little bit closer. Once again, I mean, when that's a packed house, it is a tough place to play, so that is worth keeping in mind. Then Georgia, I do think you drop this one. It does help that it's in Tuscaloosa. I can imagine that's going to be a pretty tough matchup for Georgia to go in there and go into Tuscaloosa and get a win. But I do think Georgia does so. If you look at the Bulldogs top to bottom, they are built to win this upcoming season once again. They're the clear favorite to win the national championship as well, and I really wouldn't be surprised if they did so. So I think you drop that game, especially with it being as early on in the season as it is. That's just going to be a tough one to win there for Alabama, especially with all the adjustments this team is having to make. So I think you're 3-1 heading into October. You take care of Vanderbilt, no problem. South Carolina, kind of a close game here, but I do think you get the win. Tennessee on the road. We saw this on the road in Knoxville 2 years ago, where Tennessee finally ended their drought against Alabama. And I do think that the Crimson Tide dropped this one this upcoming season as well. Tennessee's a team that I really could see being a dark horse in the SEC this season. Yamaleeva, definitely a quarterback worth keeping an eye on. That's a team that's going to be pretty talented. I think you drop that one, especially in as tough of an environment as it is, but I do think it's close. But you do get a really nice win here against Mizzou. You got them at home after the Tennessee game. Missouri, wouldn't be surprised if they were top 15, potentially even top 10 heading into that one. Mizzou is suddenly a true threat in the SEC, which is insane considering where they were just a few years ago. But I think you pick up a really nice win here. Another really tough matchup, but I do think you knock them off. So you're 6-2 heading into November. LSU is a game that I really went back and forth on. I think that LSU is a beatable team. They're kind of similar to Tennessee, though. I feel like the Tennessee and LSU games are pretty similar. Both teams should be pretty good this season, and they both play in really tough environments. So they've really strong home field advantages. So I think he dropped them one to LSU, but I do think it's a close game that could definitely go either way. Honestly, I feel like 10 wins is very reasonable for this team. I feel like Georgia is more than likely a loss, but if you can, I mean, Tennessee and LSU, I wouldn't be surprised if this team won one of those games. But you also got a tough one on the road at Oklahoma, a little bit down the road, which I do have you winning there. So I think you beat OU, beat Mercer, no problem. And then Auburn could be an interesting team this upcoming season. I think Alabama is better, but Auburn's definitely a team that's got definitely some potential, some upside. Looking forward to 2024, and I think you get a nice win there as well. So I do have Alabama at 9-3, which is something that Alabama fans are not at all used to. But once again, when you consider just the adjustments of this team, it's a new era, new head coach, and when it's as significant of a shift as it is, going from Nick Saban to Kalen DeBoer, I feel like there's going to be some bumps in the road in 2024. So I do think 9-3 for Alabama, but this is a team that's got a high ceiling, and I mean, also this is just a brutal schedule. I mean, it's really done no favors. Georgia's going to be brutal. Tennessee, LSU, both really good. Missouri's going to be great. Oklahoma's going to be great. I mean, some tough road games otherwise. So I think 9-3 for this upcoming season for Alabama, but I do think once again there's a bright future for Alabama. It's just going to be kind of a bumpy first year in 2024. I think the ceiling's 11-1 for this team. I see them dropping a game at some point. Got 9-3 for the prediction and 8-4 for the floor. I honestly can't imagine this team has less than 8 wins this upcoming season, despite the schedule being as brutal as it is. But I'll say this though as well. If you want a little bit of optimism, Georgia, having them at home, if you can win that Georgia game there in week 4, I really feel like this is a team that's bound for a great season. I still think they take a loss at some point, but I mean, that Georgia game is going to be a pretty critical one, I think, for Alabama in determining how this season is going to go. If they lose that game, probably a couple of losses to follow. I really wouldn't be too surprised. But with that, I'm interested to hear your thoughts, especially if you're Alabama fans, in the comments below. And I appreciate you guys watching as always. My name is Evan. This is All Sports Central. Stay tuned for more. Catch you on the next one.